So, as the continuation of our past lesson, let us now proceed to the special education versus mainstreaming versus inclusive education. So, before natin i-discuss yung differences nila, let's start with the definition of these three concepts of education. Let's start with special education. Special education, according to Wikipedia, is the practice of educating students in a way that addresses the individual differences and special needs. So, ibig sabihin, sa special educations, ang mga bata na may special needs are merged in a single classroom. So, hindi sila nahahaluan ng mga estudyante which is na walang disability. So, next is mainstreaming. So, sa mainstreaming daw, kag si inclusion, is more similar than special education. So, mainstreaming. Mainstreaming is the practice of placing students with special education services in a general education classroom during specific time periods based on their skills. So, sa mainstreaming naman is yung may mga special needs na mga bata is minsan na may merge sila sa classroom together with the general education classroom. For example is, ang subject is in English. So, sa English class is i-merge sila together with the general education classroom, which is also known as yung mga regular students. So, pagdating naman sa science and mathematics, pwede silang i-separate because more broader siya at need nila ng assistance ng mga teachers. So, kailangan nilang i-separate. So, next is the inclusive education. Students with special needs spend most of their time with non-special or general education needs students. Sa inclusive education naman is mini-merge sila together with the general education or yung mga regular students. So, for example, yung may mga sakit such as may mga disability in terms of mental or physical, yung mga may mga polio or something like that na mini-merge sila together with the general education or yung mga normal students. So, next is, so, na-learn na natin ang differences ng tatlong concepts. So, let's now discuss the differences. So, I will present the PPT. So kanina, na-define na natin ang different concepts of education. So, next is comparing special education, inclusion, and mainstreaming. So, there are different factors to differentiate these three concepts. So, meron tayong learners. In terms of learners, nag-iiba-iba sila sa curriculum. Next is assessment and evaluation, learning placement and delivery of services, and also in philosophy. So, nag-iiba sila based on those factors. So, let's start with the learners. So, sa special education, students who are not part of the classroom norm. So, meaning, sa special education is yung mga disabled or yung mga persons with disabilities are merged in a single classroom. Hindi sila nahahaluan ng mga regular students or yung walang disability. So, meaning, ina-isolate yung mga learners na may disability sa loob ng isang classroom. So, doon sila hinuhubog at hinahasa upang maging ganap na learner. So, next is inclusion. All same-age peers, learners are in one class regardless of the ability. So, sa inclusion naman, in terms of the learning, sa special education is puro may disability yung magkaklase. While sa inclusion na naman is nahalo yung may disability at yung wala. So, sa mainstreaming naman, selected learners are included in a general education class based on their readiness instead of their age. So, sa mainstreaming is almost similar sila na inclusion, but depende sa students if marunong na siya sa ganyang subject to be considered or included in that specific class. So, next is the curriculum. So, sa special education, we have strength-based and needs-based individualized curriculum. So, before we broaden this concept, let's first start to identify what does individualized curriculum mean. Individualized curriculum is a course of study designed specifically for each individual student. So, sa special education classroom, meaning nito is learning together but evaluated individually. So, together sila nagle-learn ng mga kasama nila, but yung strength at yung needs nila is the basis towards evaluating or assisting them. So next is inclusion. So sa inclusion is general education curriculum. Ano ba ang meaning ng general education curriculum? So general education curriculum is designed to ensure that students meet these goals through inquiry-based learning across the discipline. So merong collaboration na gaganap at sa inclusion is nire-respect yung diversity at binavalue yung new ideas. So, sa inclusion kasi is merge yung regular students at yung with disability. So, yung mga ideas and yung mga new concepts are valued. So, next is mainstreaming. So, sa mainstreaming, learner may have access both general education curriculum and a more individualized curriculum. Ina-analyze ang bawat isa at binavalue yung diversity at collaboration, diversity in new ideas yung main point. Next is assessment and evaluation. Sa special education, mostly strength-based but sometimes is also standard-based. So strength-based means it focuses on an individual's self-determination and strength, resources, and resilient even they have adverse condition. How does the learner affect change for the rest? So strength-based meaning is ano yung performance ng isa is gaano ba ito nakaka-apekto sa the rest o sa mga kasama nito. Next is the standard-based assessment. So, sa special education, there is also a standard-based assessment which means that relies on the evaluation of students' understanding with respect to agreed upon standards, also known as outcomes. So, demonstration of understanding a concept or skills. Depende rin sa kung paano niya naiintindihan yung concept at paano ito ma-evaluate through assessment. So, next is inclusion, norm reference. Ano bang ibig sabihin ng norm reference? So, norm reference is estimate of the position of the tested individual in a predefined population with respect to the trait being measured. Dito naman sa norm reference, which is under ang inclusion, is nami-measure if ang individual ba is better or worse compared sa other takers. So, yun yung meaning ng norm reference, which is under doon ang inclusion. Next is mainstreaming. Both norm reference and strength-based reference. So, ibig sabihin, sa mainstreaming is nakadepende sa kung ano ang pinapakita ng isang bata sa loob ng classroom na nakakaapekto sa kanyang mga kasamahan. So the next factor is the learning placement and delivery services. So sa special education, all services happen inside the special education classroom, but other services such as therapeutic interventions may be integrated into these settings or delivered separately. So, ano bang ibig sabihin ng therapeutic intervention? Therapeutic intervention is an effort made by individuals or groups to improve the well-being of someone else who either is in need of help but refusing it or is otherwise unable to initiate or accept help. So, sa special education is ang learning is nasa loob ng isang classroom together with his classmate. Yung may mga with special needs or disabilities, sila yung nurture sa loob ng classroom. At in terms of delivery services, integrated into this setting of delivery are separated. So, next, inclusion. All services happen inside the general education classroom. So, meaning sa inclusion is yung learning is learning happens in yung sa blended, which is concluded na may special needs at yung mga regular students. Next is mainstreaming. Receive services in both general education classroom and outside through the use of rooms, and therapeutic programs. Sa mainstreaming naman is may dalawa. Yung learning takes place in a classroom na nami-merge sila at meron na naman ay merong separate classroom para sa other subjects nila or sa other lessons na tinitake over. So next is the philosophy. First is special education. Learner-centered. Some learners have very specific needs that may not be appropriately addressed in general education classroom. So sa general education classroom kasi is pangkalahatan. So ano yung performance ng isang grupo based on the performance ng bawat isa. While the philosophy, sa philosophy ng special education is more on focus on paano ba na-develop yung person with disability, paano siya nakaka-catch up with the lessons at nakaka-learn ba siya or nakaka-cope up ba siya sa mga lessons before proceeding to the other topic. So, yun yung concept or yung philosophy ng special education. Next is inclusion. It is more focused on right-based. All learners have a right to access quality education that is available to others. So, sa inclusion naman, naniniwala yung mga expert na lahat ng bata, whether may disability or wala, is they have the right to learn. So, meaning, there is no segregation, there is no binaliwala yung mga students. So, dapat, bawat isa is may access sa education. Next is mainstreaming, preparatory and integrative. Learners are given access to general education but will need to catch up on skills first. So, sa philosophy naman ng mainstreaming is before ang students ma-conclude na dapat nandyan na siya sa level na yan or sa ganyang subject is magmamatter kung sa capacity niya or sa kung ready na ba siya or marunong na ba siya sa ganyang bagay. So so the special education, inclusion, and mainstreaming are different from each other, but sometimes they have similarities and these factors are affecting the students. So, yan lang.